The mountains of Scotland and some of the most stunning scenery in Europe, the backdrop to an incredible challenge. Rory Gibson and Andrew Johnston have set themselves a target to climb all 277 Scottish mountains of more than 3,000 feet, the Munros, and they aim to do it in just 50 days. They call it the Great Munros Challenge. Benmore on the island of Mull, an idyllic setting in perfect conditions for the start of what will be a contest between Gibson and Johnston and nature. Thousands of people have turned to munro-bagging, some taking a lifetime to climb them all. But not since Sir Hugh Munro first surveyed these mountains and gave them their collective name at the end of the last century has there been such a challenge. Andrew Johnston's a former Commonwealth Games athlete whose life has revolved round the great outdoors at home and abroad. He and Rory Gibson have been friends since school days, and as part of their preparation for this, they've been trekking in the Himalayas. The task is awesome. It takes in some of Scotland's most dramatically scenic areas, including Loch Lomond, north to Britain's highest mountain, Ben Nevis, and then towards the east coast, passing by Balmoral and Royal Deeside. Then it's back west through the Cairngorms and on to the romantic Isle of Skye. From there it's north through Torridon to the finish, Ben Hope in Sutherland. For Rory and Andrew, on the eve of this challenge, there's no doubt in their minds that they can make it.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
All things going well. We have a 50-day schedule which we are very confident is physically possible, all things going well. But there are these unknowns of the weather, of accidental injury, of exhaustion through the continuous activity, which we can't possibly account for, never having gone through quite this kind of experience before.
Tell me what you've done in terms of physical and psychological preparation.
Well, we've been working at this sort of thing, or playing at this sort of thing, for a lifetime, really. We both love mountain biking, fell running, the hills, swimming. So we've got a lot of background in this kind of effort, but not really the extended kind of effort that we're about to undertake. More specifically, in the last year, we've been to the Himalayas as the beginning of our specific preparation for the event, to build up general body strength, to build up leg strength, and I suppose to get to know each other better under stress.
You've known each other for a long time now,
Yeah.
and I guess it's going to be very important to each of you individually that the other is there for psychological backup, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But do you visualise that somewhere along the way, nerves are going to become a wee bit frayed?
Undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly, absolutely.
Yes.
But I feel confident that we've had a trial in the Himalayas when really we were under duress. I was ill for quite a lot of that time, and Rory was in prime form. And we had that little thing that the target for the day had been set. I didn't want to make it, but we made it. And, you justify later, okay, well, you get through it. And so having had 8 weeks of that, this is much more important. So I feel that we've learnt something there. That was a kind of a good nursery school, if you want to call it that. We did that before. It's probably the senior school.
It was a crucial part to the making of the team, I suppose, that we do know each other so well, because you can fall out with friends and know that it's not the end of the world, and that tomorrow is another day.
Now here we are on the eve of what is, by any standard, an incredible challenge. Are there any apprehensions, any butterflies in the tummy at this stage?
In a way, you could say facetiously that we're almost doing it to get rid of the Munros. There are an awful lot of people whose lives are ruined by spending every weekend for 30 years trying to bag Munros, and if we get it over and done with, then it leaves the rest of our lives clear to actually go and enjoy ourselves.
A final study of the route, with the excitement beginning to mount for this intrepid pair. Andrew's brother Mike and Rory's girlfriend Janice Leonard look on intently. Conditions are perfect, but no one is foolish enough to expect this kind of weather for 50 successive days, not in Scotland. Day one, and an early emphasis on foot care, as Rory and Andrew recognise that do-it-yourself chiropody will be so vital over the next 7 weeks or so. Meanwhile, Ben Hope beckons. The athletes aim to raise thousands of pounds for the Cot Death Trust charity, and Dr. Angus Gibson, chairman and co-founder of that organisation, is there to start them off at the beginning of this astounding test of physical and psychological stamina.
And go.
The Great Munro's Challenge is underway. Rory and Andrew, both in their early 30s, gave up their jobs as an architect and a medical representative to concentrate on this challenge. The entire project has taken a year out of their lives, but there are no regrets or even the slightest thought that they may have bitten off more than they can chew. Less than an hour has passed and they jog their way in a rather leisurely manner to the top of Ben Moor, Rory's father John there to encourage them. Although there's little time to soak up the undoubted beauty of this island from their special vantage point, there's enough to appreciate the reason so many people flock here during the summer months. But there are 276 more Munros to conquer, and more than 1,600 miles of walking, climbing, running and cycling. And so it's on to the road bikes for the 38-mile cycle towards the mainland and their first overnight stop. Day 2, the pass of Brander near Oban and Loch Awe in all its splendour, and 4 Munros to climb. The Cuillin Dam below Ben Cuillin, the first Munro on today's tough agenda. To follow, Stop Dianf, Ben Cochel and Ben Ianach. Today, Rory and Andrew will cover a total of 10.5 miles and climb nearly 7,000 feet. And when that's done, they have a 25 miles bike ride to the next campsite. The top of Stop Dianf, a short run from their previous conquest, Ben Cuillin. The air is still refreshingly cool and clear, and Rory and Andrew give the impression they're just warming up. Their food intake, the type as well as the amounts over the period, will be vitally important.
Hi. 2 down, 2 to go.
They're burning up between 6,000 and 8,000 calories a day. But one concern for them is the lack of fluids.
Dehydration is a real potential disaster. Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of days, we're going to be covering a lot of ground at the high level, along a ridge, picking up 7, 8, 9, 10 Munros without ever dropping down low enough to pick up water. And this is where the backup team is going to help us, because we'll be expecting them to come up and meet us on the hills with food, with water, and they are really going to make the success of the expedition.
Food carriers Mike Johnston and Graham Laybourne arrive on Ben Cochel just a few minutes ahead of Rory and Andrew.
On target. Yeah, perfect timing.
place to be. We've probably been going a little bit quicker than we will probably end up, but we're feeling good at the moment.
It's very difficult being the first couple of days. We're obviously just dying to get going, so we are just pushing on a wee bit. It's maybe a bit silly, but in these sort of conditions, there's every incentive just to keep going.
Yeah, it's been great. The weather's been good. There's been sunshine, but there's been wind on the top to keep you cool. There's been ample water. The backup's been excellent with the food. We've slept well, so fingers crossed it's going well so far.
Day 3 saw 5 more Munros chalked off, Ben Vuya and 4 in the so-called Arrochar Alps. Then on the 4th day, the 3,000 feet climb up Ben Lomond and the introduction of an unusual set of clothing for climbers, wetsuits. For to get to Ben Lomond, there's the little matter of a half-mile swim across Loch Lomond. Both men are excellent swimmers, and with conditions not too difficult, they ease themselves effortlessly towards Ben Lomond. It's all part of the challenge and highlights their swimming technique, a discipline Andrew was involved in as a Scottish triathlete in the 1990 Commonwealth Games in Auckland, New Zealand. Soon they'll be on their way up Ben Lomond, a mountain which attracts thousands of munro-baggers throughout the summer months. It's Scotland's most southerly peak, over 3,000 feet, and probably the most accessible Monro. And while the climb itself is straightforward enough, Rory and Andrew must always bear in mind that after it, they face a half-mile swim back across the loch. From Ben Lomond, it was north and 58 Munros in 14 days. But the good weather was not to hold, and even now questions were being asked. The schedule was under pressure, and before long news came through that they'd dropped a day. Day 18, a supreme challenge. Ahead, a punishing schedule of 10 Munros, including Britain's highest mountain, Ben Nevis. The total climb today is more than 12,000 feet, and with that lost day in mind, the pace has been stepped up. Yesterday there were 11 Munros, tomorrow 5 more. The climb up Ben Nevis will take an hour and a half, then on to Enoch Moor, Enoch Beg and the others in that clutch of mountains. It's now all about making up for lost time, and that can mean taking risks. A short route between the Ben and Enoch Moor is on the cards, but with the peaks shrouded in mist and visibility down to a few metres in places, Rory and Andrew must tread carefully. But the race against time is on. Today's mileage on foot as they pick their way along difficult and sometimes dangerous ridges will amount to 25 miles. All the while, of course, they've got to beware of injury, particularly to their ankles. But when you're on the roof of Britain, it's difficult to allow the mundane to creep into your thoughts. Like the African Queen, this little boat chugs its way from Dalwhinnie along 12 miles of picturesque Loch Erich towards Ben Older. The boat brings this week's backup team with equipment and food for one of the many remote overnight camps. John Arbuckle prays his friends are safe and well in the hills. He and Inga Patterson carry with them also messages from well-wishers from all over the country. From here we can gaze towards Loch Rannoch and Cuillin, the Perthshire mountain conquered several days before. It's on the shores of this beautiful loch that Rory and Andrew will rest for the night. This exercise highlights the invaluable assistance and support given to this challenge by the many landowners and factors throughout the country. In the distance, Munro number 95, Scorgoira. Soon, Rory and Andrew will be arriving here in front of the bothy to the overnight camp.
Hi. Well,
yeah.
Hi, Frank.
I can't believe how fresh you're looking.
I was only a 10-hour day today.
You must be on something.
Fresh air.
That's it.
That's great.
Ah, that's good.
So how are you feeling?
Pretty good today. We've had...
Sore feet.
Oh, well, yeah, Rory's got sore feet. We've all got... So that's part of
Grab a
the
seat.
day. Rory's sprained his ankle about 3 times, but he's now got it securely strapped.
Could have been in our interest, actually. It slowed us down. There was a temptation just to go fast from the start, but it's made us go sort of long and slow as opposed to hard and fast. And it's probably helped us to keep fresh, in fact, not traumatising the bodies too much.
The boys were in great form, full of enthusiasm and energy, and they spoke of 1 or 2 interesting characters they'd met.
We didn't meet a soul all day, and the second last hill, just one lonely figure appeared out of the mist and bumped into us and said, "Andy Johnston, did we not see you in Namche Bazaar in Nepal in November?" Yeah. And that was just a chance meeting. We didn't know him from Adam apart from that, but he had happened to have, I think, had a few beers with Andy. So after a 2-hour acquaintance, the next time we met him was in thick fog in the middle of the Scottish Highlands.
The amount of energy it takes to climb 10 or 11 Munros in a day obviously has to be replaced. The body is drained and easy-cook foods like boiled rice and pasta are always available, sometimes to excess. But this is an essential part of the programme, even though they'll probably never want to see another grain of rice as long as they live. Rory is updated on life in the world he left behind that sunny day on Mull. But who needs that world when there are settings like this?
Being in the hills and seeing the natural fauna, you become very aware of what clumsy intruders we are in their environment. By the time you've seen them, you're aware that you've been watched for the last 10 minutes, and they are so much more alert and sensitive to their environment than we are. We really feel as though we're just stumbling around in their environment. And I think we've become more aware of that, although, as Andrew says, we've become more comfortable in that environment. We are still very much intruders in it.
It's now after 9 o'clock in the evening. The sun is still out, but its warmth is fading quickly. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, of course, you've done 95 to date. Tomorrow you will do the 100th, and that, of course, is a tremendous milestone. You're over a third of the way through. What are your thoughts now as you look ahead to tomorrow?
Well, as we had the opportunity today, again, because it was so clear to look back on what we'd already achieved, it really does give you immense confidence. We've been through some of what, certainly in my mind, were the harder hills to climb if the weather had been bad, because it's smiled on us till this stage. And we've, as you say, got nearly 100 under our belt. I'm certainly looking forward to going into the hills that I've got a slightly greater affinity for in terms of hills, because I know them much better.
As Andy says, though, we've been blessed so far with pretty good weather, so you can't help but feel that the time is going to come when we're going to be deluged on or blown off our feet. Really, I mean, in the Scottish conditions, it's bound to happen at some point, so it's now a matter of where and when.
And clearly, of course, the good conditions have meant that psychologically you've been on a high for most of the time.
That's great. It's really helped us, yes, to get some momentum at the start. If we'd started off with bad weather and we'd been slowed down by it, it would have been very hard on the morale. But here we are, as you say, on the threshold of 100, and we've managed to keep the pace going pretty well.
Oh, I must say, I love the nightcaps. So we'll let you get to bed then.
Thank you very much.
Good night. We'll see you in the morning. Is it 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
I'll do my best to be there for the bacon and eggs.
Yes, do that.
Darkness falls quickly, and the stiff breeze blows over the campsite, whistling its way up the glen and bringing with it the occasional sounds of the loch's wildlife. But there are other noises to be heard tonight in this eerie Scottish atmosphere. It's just after 6 o'clock in the morning. The midges are already out in force. I've had a cold and miserable night in a tent. I never want to spend a night like that again, next to a cameraman who snored non-stop for hours. But apart from that, it's been quite good. The atmosphere is tranquil and calming. The nearest road is the A9 Perth to Inverness artery, but it's 16 miles away as the crow flies, and it might as well be on the other side of the planet. To wake up to this kind of scenario is totally exhilarating, and clearly Rory and Andrew are in the right frame of mind for the day ahead. Breakfast, canned cream rice, the ideal meal, as Rory and Andrew stoke their engines for today's schedule.
Ambrosia cream rice. When was the last time you had a bowl of this?
I love that.
Full of sugar. This is Rory's idea. I must admit I've eaten more than enough of it. You set off 10 minutes before us. You get the top of the ridge, give you a quick scan. And away.
Behave yourself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get over my night's lack of sleep.
Well, I had about 7 hours sleep, I'd say, which is probably about enough.
You're lucky.
Fitful, off and on.
I found it cold.
Well, that's a pretty warm tent. So I didn't even sleep in the bag, but yeah, it was a bit nippy.
Yeah. I can't believe these midges already.
This is actually pretty mild. Have you put some stuff on?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it shouldn't bother you too much.
Got any in your rice?
No, not yet. It's a hazard of the job.
Soon it's time for another day's hard graft. Checks are made of the gear and foodstuffs they'll need for the next 10 to 12 hours before they next see the backup team. It's on then into the hills with Ben Viol, the first mountain to tackle, and of course the magic number 100, Gilshan. At the back of their minds, however, Rory and Andrew know that the 50-day target has been disrupted. Now they have an additional challenge. Can they pull back that one lost day? Day 29, Rory and Andrew's last day in the Cairngorms. Since we left them in Ben Alder, they've now completed 48 more Munros in areas including Loch Nagar and Glen Shee, but they're still one day behind. In the Cairngorms, Monro number 148, and the first of 7 Rory and Andrew will tackle today, walking and running a total of 30 miles before cycling 16 miles to Glenbanker for the next day's work. It's here they skip over the source of the River Dee as it begins its 100-mile journey through some of Scotland's most beautiful countryside before ending at Aberdeen. But with almost 30 days gone, they're still one day down on their target of 50 days for this great Munro's challenge. Are they going to make it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're only one day out of our original schedule at the moment, but we've already worked out how we're going to make that back up. So, yeah, it's still an exciting challenge, but we'll make it. Yeah.
It's comforting to be over halfway.
It might be fair to say we feel we can make it, but there's other factors like the weather which could easily play a big part.
Now, by now, you've run across virtually half of Scotland. What kind of feelings do you get from that?
In that we've become more comfortable in this wild environment, we have almost not lost touch with the real world.
Yeah.
It was noticeable when in the Dromochta Hills we came down onto the A9 and both of us, quite separately, just walked straight onto the middle of the road and were almost knocked down by cars travelling at 70. We'd just forgotten completely about the real or the civilised world whizzing on by us.
Yeah.
It was
there was the
a
camper
sobering
van.
moment.
I couldn't put my foot out and the guy shook his fist wildly and I had the shivers up the spine more than twice later on in the day thinking, good grief, halfway through the Munros, surviving the pains and ankles and mountains to be run and flattened by a Ford Escort on the A9 would have been a bit of a shame. Well, you're meant to fall off a cliff, not get run down on the A9.
Day 37, the west coast of Scotland, and the backup team soldiers on towards Glenelg from Shielbridge, the stunning Five Sisters of Kintail standing imposingly behind.
I mean, our support has been absolutely phenomenal. We've had the bikes have always been in the right place at the right time. The sandwiches have been made to our taste. Breakfast has been provided on time. I mean, it's just been amazingly fortuitous that the people who've really, without any great experience other than they're willing to do it, have really made it possible for us to maximise our time. I mean, tonight when we get back at possibly, by the time we finished our cycle, 10 o'clock, there'll be a meal waiting for us and everything will be in place so we can get to bed as quick as possible for tomorrow.
This week's chief cook, Nora Mogi, and bottle washer David Ford have recently married and are effectively on their honeymoon. They'll drive as far west as possible in the hope that their timing for meeting up with Rory and Andrew is just right.
So what time do we have to get the bikes there for Andy and Rory?
Rory said that they might be down about 8 o'clock. We should have the bikes at the end of the track when they come down the path.
Well, here we are at the end of day 37. It's just gone 10 past 8 in the evening and we're in Glen Arnarsdale. In a few minutes' time, we hope Rory and Andrew will come across the bridge to my left here and head for base camp this evening. Today they will have completed 9 Munros, finishing on the saddle and taking in along the way the South Cluny Ridge. The mountain bikes, each costing £1,500, continue to play their part in this challenge. Speed is now of the essence, as we learn more bad news. They've now lost a second day. Here on the shores of Loch Lomond, the Loch of Hell, I asked them if, since we last saw them, they'd been going through hell themselves.
Well, I certainly have.
Why?
I laughed loudly then. Well, I mean, it had appeared, I think, on the surface up till about Cairngorm time that it had been a bit of a breeze. The weather had been in our favour more than we were due, and this week we've really felt that we've had a rough section through the Noidart, which is probably one of the most difficult sections to navigate in bad weather. We had 3 days of that. I myself took a particularly nasty tummy bug, which has taken a week to get rid of. But thankfully today I feel a lot better and now got rid of it. I mean, this week we've been quite well separated. Rory's been hanging on while I've been struggling up the hill. And in fact, on Friday we went out with, he was not prepared to go out with me alone, as it were, because I was in such a state that we had a pacer. Lindsay came along just to sort of supervise that I was going to get to the end of the section. So we've had our moments.
Yes, Andrew's talking fairly matter-of-factly about it, but he's really produced a superhuman effort to get through the week. Despite his illness and injury, he's battled on and we've achieved our targets, apart from the one day, which I don't think was really to do with his illness. We've achieved our targets despite those setbacks. It's been quite a week.
Well, going back to the psychological point again, if you do lose another day, is there any question that you'll try to make those up, or will you accept? You will?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a large part of our conversation during the day, and there's plenty of time to converse. Until we come out of the Cuillins, we're not going to commit ourselves to anything, because the Cuillins, we really are in the lap of the gods as far as weather's concerned. Who knows whether we'll be able to do it in one day or whether we're going to be 5 days behind by the time we come out of Skye. But when we come off Skye, then we'll be getting our heads together and just working out how we are going to tackle making up the lost ground.
And here on Skye, despite the uncertainty, the race is still on. There was no time to spare as the Cuillins, a succession of 11 tightly packed Munros linked by a jagged ridge, beckoned. And here on Skye we wondered if the notoriously unpredictable weather would favour them. In short, the conditions here would make or break this challenge.
Been a dodgy period in the weather and we have to go, and bad weather will be more than apprehensive. Neither of us have really done much walking or climbing or scrambling in Skye. We've both been on the ridge but not completed it, and we've attempted to do this all in a 1 or maybe 2 go attempt, so that causes a little concern. Apart from that, just the hostility of the weather anywhere can really put you off, and the fact that we've limited ourselves to quite a tight schedule means that we must go out into these conditions.
The next day, the Cuillins, and the worst has happened. Visibility is down to only 10 metres. With them in the mist and rain, they have guide Jeff Charlton, an experienced mountaineer who's helping them manoeuvre their way along the dangerous ridges and up the inaccessible pinnacle, or the in-pin as it's known. There are hints now of slight apprehension about this day. Climbers on this magical island have a saying that if you wait 5 minutes, the weather will change. but today it was stuck at its worst, living up to its name of the Island of Mist. It's now 9 p.m, the light is fading and the backup team is concerned. News arrives that Andrew and Rory have come off the Cuillins at another area after completing a staggering 8 Munros in atrocious conditions. So how do they feel?
Great, really exhilarated. It was just a very exciting day. Just shame we couldn't see anything, but maybe that was a good thing. It's pretty exposed up there. You could tell that the drop was big, but fortunately you didn't know quite how big enough. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. Made a difference being in the hands of a professional. It's not the sort of place we'd have gone on a route.
I think it would have been impossible to do it on the route, definitely. But glad to get it done. The in pin as well, yeah. It was actually a lot easier than some of the other bits on the ridge. Wasn't it, Jim?
You flew up the in pin without any problems whatsoever.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Well
there
said.
was a couple of wee bits where you weren't very happy, but apart from that, it was no problem.
Completely different from the other 193 Munros we previously climbed.
Yes, oh, we're on 200.
On 200.
Yeah, 201. Beers tonight.
Day 44, Rory and Andrew are still 2 days behind, but their resolve and determination now seem greater than ever. Here in Strathfarrar, the Monro Dam, a dramatic backdrop on a day which has already seen them climb 5 Munros, with 3 more scheduled before night falls. Skirnalapich is next in line, but there's no time to look for bridges. Overhead and underfoot, they've got everything going for them. Eating away at their thoughts, however, is the question of the lost time. They've now moved into overdrive in a desperate bid to make up those lost days. They can see what's ahead of them for 30 miles from the top of Anribichan, taking in the pure Highland air before the tortuous ascent to Ansochach. With only 6 days left to reach their goal, how can they complete their challenge inside the allotted time?
Don't sleep.
Yeah, I mean, we have employed or asked and requested more people to join us who are voluntarily going to be there at the end, and they'll hopefully carry our rucksacks. I've noticed recently that they've become more of a slowing factor, so if we haven't got them to carry, we can move quicker and without the same effort. We can possibly, again, depending on the weather, sleep on bialachs rather than having to go back to the van or a tent site specifically. Sleep for 3 or 4 hours and get up at dawn, which is around about 4. We did that for the Cuillins, and 2 nights with combined 10 hours sleep, we felt fine.
For the last week we've been averaging about 20 miles and 9,000 feet, but we're pacing ourselves to get nearer the end, but come the last 2 or 3 days we're just getting to the end, so we just keep going.
Yeah, that's it. So Sunday 10:30.
May drop dead on day 49.
Their desperate rescue plan, however, has failed. They've made it to day 50, but the unrelenting weather has crushed their hopes. Horizontal rain and fierce winds have battered them in these last stages of this record bid. But their spirits are not dampened. They push on in the knowledge that while their self-imposed target is not to be, there is still a record to set. That of the fastest time for climbing all Scotland's 277 Munros. The only question now is, how quickly can they do it? The superhuman effort, allied to the lack of sleep during these last few days of a hard and punishing schedule, does, however, produce the occasional amusing side effect.
I had a fairly intense dream the other day of a reception to greet us at the end of our trip, and we were ushered into an assembly room where there were 2 ceremonial beds for us to lie down on. I suspect that tells a story.
But there is still a record-breaking dream which is real. The aim now is to chop 16 days off the previous fastest time for this kind of challenge. And as they leave Ullapool behind, the final 4 Munros beckon in the craggy countryside of Sutherland, with the twilight of Sullivan in the distance as Rory and Andrew prepare for the final push. The deserted road in this sparsely populated region of Scotland leads them to their final base camp in this great Munros challenge. And as night engulfs this vast area, Rory and Andy reach Inchnadamh. But there's apprehension as they learn that the weather forecast for tomorrow isn't good. No more time must be lost. If tomorrow is to be their last day, they must start in the darkness at 3 a.m, with the possibility of 19 hours endeavour ahead of them. Still, the dice are heavily loaded against them, with the fierce wind and driving rain threatening to ruin their finale. Already today they've conquered Conneval, Benmore Ascent and Ben Clibrec, and now dressed for the extremely wet weather and underfoot conditions, it's the last run in this marathon. 909 miles on foot, climbing more than 370,000 feet. But ahead, a final climb and a few more miles on the bikes to add to their cycling total of 750 miles. A mammoth achievement by any standard. The camper van, home and canteen for the past 7 weeks, once again acts as refuge for the final piece of preparation. Rory's father's there along with friends. It's a special moment as they map out their route for the assault on Ben Hope.
I think now we're going for no messing about, straight up off the road.
Yes, and I think we really better get going.
Okay.
This week's backup team includes triathlete Ginny Pollard, who has a special role in this finale. Once Rory and Andrew have gulped down their last banana and the inevitable bowl of muesli, it will be time to get onto the road bikes. Now, as we reach the very final stages of this event, Rory reflects on the last 50 days. Indeed, he appears nervous at this point and is keen to get on.
We're waiting, Andy. Right, okay. Don't rush yourself.
Well, we can always get Mike to stop the van.
Ginny Pollard will accompany them as they head for Ben Hope. She's there to pace them on the road bikes. But there's a definite tension as Rory snaps at the more laid-back Andy.
No rush, Andy.
No rush. Sunny. Right.
Andy won't be rushed. He plans to savour this moment, and even though Rory might appear agitated, he can still find a funny line.
Right, where we're going?
Ben Hope. Remember, it's the 13th.
Okay, right, see you later, Mike.
Yeah.
Cheerio, Mike.
Well, that's it. That's no more descents now. The ankle twisting potential is reduced to 1 ascent, and 1 crazy French driver, of course, could knock us down on the way between here and there.
The pace is keen and the atmosphere is one of excitement and exhilaration as they take the long road towards the last Monro. It's now 6 p.m, 15 miles to cycle and Ben Hope still to climb before darkness descends. All that and weather which is deteriorating fast. Indeed, the mixed climate has dictated the 7.5 weeks of this challenge. It began in the sunshine of Mull through Loch Lomond to the inhospitable conditions of Ben Nevis. The idyllic setting of Ben Alder and the Cairngorms was in stark contrast to the treacherous mist of the Cuillins on Skye. Their last glimpse of the sun was at Strathfarrar before they encountered the monsoon-like conditions of Sutherland, which worsened by the minute here on Ben Hope. Despite the weather and the traumas which beset them over the period, a new record has been set. 51 days, 9 hours and 22 minutes. No one has completed such a challenge in this way. It is unique, and the elation of achieving it is instant and all-consuming.
Fantastic. Right, what are we going to do now? Thanks for your support, guys. Yes, halfway.
I can't believe I'm still standing.
Later, as their achievement sunk in, they spoke of how they felt at the finish.
Blank. Relief. Yeah.
Yeah, immense relief, really. I think that's probably due mostly to the weather. With a few days of reflection and thinking about it, there's now a huge vacuum, and you can see why Hugh Timmins wanted to carry on running forever.
Did you feel under pressure because you perhaps knew you weren't going to make the 50-day mark?
It was a little frustrating because we had always planned to keep up our sleeves the possibility of going and continuing till dark and setting off at 3 in the morning, which we in fact did to do the last day. But the weather, as Rory said, was just so bad that we couldn't really entertain that. It was just too dangerous to do. So we had to settle for the 51. But retrospectively, again, because of that weather, I'd say that we were happy with that. Yeah. And so we'd sneaked through the first section very happily and got the ball rolling.
During the course of the event too, it was very easy to get so completely wrapped up in what we were doing that the 50-day target just seemed absolutely paramount. But again, with a few days reflection, seeing it in perspective, it doesn't really seem quite so dramatic to have lost a day, and the schedule of 51 days will do, I think.
And so the names of Rory Gibson and Andrew Johnston will go down in the record books as the most astounding munro-baggers of all time. 277 mountains in just 51 days, the equivalent of more than 14 Mount Everests. Add to that ingenuity, expertise, fitness and stamina, and above all enthusiasm, making them admirable adventurers through some of the most magnificent scenery in the world, in this, the Great Munro's Challenge.